Hello everyone, Azzapp here and welcome to the Mel Guide. I'm a challenger on 4 different servers, US, Nordic and East, Korea, and NA on 150 ping. I've beaten Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and Sekiro with 0 deaths, which has absolutely no relation to this whatsoever, but I like mentioning it. I've done tons of research, I've spoken to the very creator of the character, I've been doing nothing but testing and theory crafting recently, and I've come up with some insanely good tips and tricks and a full-on guide. So this will be structured in 3 different parts. First, we're going to have the cheat sheet, which is basically how to run the character, runes, items, and everything that you need. Then we're gonna have a second portion, which is theory about the character, how it's supposed to be played. And then the third portion will be tips and tricks. So first things first is we're going into the cheat sheet. So basically you go teleport flash, even if you're mid or bot lane AP carry. In both works the best option. First, what you're gonna do is you're gonna build Malignance. Malignance is just all around the best item for Mel, mathematically speaking. It has super good synergy with her. Riot has done nerfs on PB, okay? Even before she went live, Riot nerfed her ultimate ability, and the way that they nerfed it is by increasing ultimate cooldown early game by so much. Malignance offsets that very well. It gives you such a big spike in early game and gives you way more reliability. Sword shoes obviously pair up with that, more penetration, and then the key tie-in item is the Shadow Flame. Shadow Flame synergy is impeccable. It works with absolutely everything, and it will almost always, like 99% cases, be procced on your ultimate. Axiom Arcanist combo with the Shadow Flame, Malignance, and the third best item would be Death Cap. You really want to get Death Cap if you have the money for it. Now, if you're struggling and you don't have enough income for it, you can always go Horizon, which is also kind of better in the losing games because it gives you a surprising amount of damage for very cheap and also builds up utility. So let's say you're defensive, you can't really leave the base, or you can't enter your jungle. Horizon does wonders for scouting, so it really saves you in the bad games, and even for the good games, very good as well. But yeah, if you can't afford to go Death Cap, then Horizon, and then Void Staff. Okay, so let's look at the runes. Arcane Comet, superb. You can here go Mana Flow Band, but Axiom Arcanist has too much synergy, so it's just better to either play better with the mana or just buy a bit of mana early. Axiom Arcanist is absolutely superb. Transcendence allows her to become so much more reliable in teamfighting, and she's not a one-off. She's not a Z. Drops a combo on one person, becomes useless. Refunding the cooldowns, having more CDR is really, really good, especially because her W is a high cooldown. Any sort of CDR you get is going to have tremendous value. So Transcendence is absolutely awesome here, and then you get Gathering Storm for the absolute scaling. This synergizes really well, especially with the high AP build that we're going. A lot of AP, Gathering Storm, Death Cap, third item, it just balloons, skyrockets. So if you have this at 20 to 30 minutes, if you can get this, you're just gonna win the game solo. Here we got Legend Haste. Legend Haste, absolutely awesome. Again, if you're struggling with mana, Prism of Mind can fix it, but I just love Legend Haste. Again, I'd rather play a bit more smart around mana control and management than have to give up Legend Haste because it's so good. You get so much CDR on your regular abilities, your ult will already be lowered by quite a lot. You already have a bunch of free CDR, and your W again, your key ability that allows you to impact the game and play the game, gets heavily reduced on the cooldown, so you get to spam it way more often, you get way more safety, which means you can play more aggressively. And then this is the one that can be swapped out. The cut down can be replaced by Coup de Grace. You can do that. It just depends what playstyle you're going for. Coup de Grace is synergized with all of this, and you'll see later on with the tips and tricks section why it can also be really good, but we already have a lot of tools that help us get that execution damage on ult. As you can see, the tie-in with the execution, it's all happening around the ultimate ability. I think cut down is a good way to offset that one-dimensional build and play a bit more self-reliant, because if you're going coup de grace, you're basically saying my teammates are going to get enemies low, but I'm going to one-shot them. I'm going to execute them on like 40% instantly, but you're still required to get enemies low, and cut down is much more stable in that regard because it's more self-reliant. It will help you win lanes a lot better. You can play your own lane to win, get people low. I don't imagine it's going to be a big deal executing them when they're low, so the bigger problem is getting them there. That's my reasoning for it, but you can experiment with it and go nuts. Here's very interesting. Even though Riot Games has given attack speed to all of the mages, basically to force mages not to take attack speed in the runes, she's one of the characters that absolutely can. You can take attack speed, especially because you of a passive. How it works, you really want to weave in auto attacks in between abilities. So if you hit your E and you know it's gonna hit, you hit E auto attack, Q auto attack. You don't do EQ auto because you maximize your passive, you get more stacks, better execution, better ult. So attack speed is really, really crucial to get in those weaved auto attacks in the windows that need to happen. Then you get adaptive AP, and then bonus health is standard. Items, we have 2 builds. It's fairly simple. This is the key build I explained, the most efficient version. You have a control, anti-tank, a bit safer version, a bit more utility version, which is, let's say you have a difficult matchup, you just want to survive, you don't necessarily need to win, your comp scales well, you gotta play control, whatever of these things. Maybe you have like a crazy good hyper late game AD carry, but but enemies have a bunch of tanks, so it's not gonna be a problem, but you're afraid of mid-game that you will just get overpowered, so you can build nothing but utility. She's already decent at killing tanks because of infinite stacking mechanic on her passive, but this build is absolutely gonna annihilate any tank that exists. And level up ordering, you're gonna be maxing your Q and E. Your W is not a big deal early. In fact, the entire game, the threat of this ability is more valuable than the ability itself. So what's going to be happening, you're likely going to be leveling it up last. E extends the duration of the route. Q gives you more stacks. So without the stacks, you're kind of not that strong, so you need Q. You also need E for better control in mid-game team fighting because the extended route. And then your W unfortunately gets maxed out last, but it's not a huge deal. You're going to have a lot of CDR early, which is going to do what most of the leveling up does anyway. So yeah, that's basically it. So let's go into the character theory right now. Character theory is very, very incredible. Mel is a control mage, but she has 3 key features that you really want to master, okay? This is what's going to create the best players on Mel, which are going to be controlling, reflecting, and executing. Controlling is basically how well you can control your waves and enemies positioning without using too much mana. It's easy to spam and shove, but you run out of mana really quick because she's mana costly, mana intensive character. So the true mastery of the player will be knowing all the minion execute thresholds, auto-attacking a lot of minions, executing through auto-attacks, which is also why we tie into attack speed. This is how you get a good player, knowing how to splash both the enemy, champion, and the wave, so you can get good control, get good pryos. This is going to be crucial if you really want to play the game and make either a tower dive, tower play, or roam. So you need to be able to get pryo without losing the mana. That's where the initial mastery comes through. Secondly is the reflecting. Reflecting is Mel W. That's her most unique ability. That's the ability that has shaken up League Sphere recently and is the newest, most unique addition. And this ability literally reshapes the game right now. Everybody's gonna have to play differently around you, and you have mind game on top of mind game as well, how you can play that. So this spell, you have to learn how to maximize its value. It's on a high cooldown. You need to know how to use it, or even better yet, how to not use it. In many cases, simply not using the ability is going to be better than using it. The mere threat factor of the ability potential is going to break a lot of team fights. If enemies rely on some long range projectile initiation, you can just hold your ability and enemies will never dare to press it in the first place. They're going to become desync. They will not have synergy because other people will be expecting it. Other people will now want to ruin the team fight by getting it reflected back onto them. So you'll see in a lot of cases, your team fighting enemies have Nami, Seraphine, Renata, whatever sort of engage you can kind of thwart and even use against them. You don't want to be the guy that kills his own teammates by getting a 4-man engage onto your team. You don't want to send a title away with your own team. You're just getting reported. They will just hold it. In like 9 out of 10 times they will hold it, so you need to hold. It's a game of patience. That's one key aspect to really learn. This ability will also make pretty much every matchup uniquely different. It's going to change a lot of dynamic. For example, Ahri, usually a big threat against immobile mages, without charm can never really engage. You can never really press ult and go after Mel. So Ahri will be losing that trade. There's a lot of champions that are going to completely be changed. Zoe is going to be nothing. He has 2 long-range abilities that are so obvious. And here's probably the best tip I can give you in this entire video. Because there's infinite new patterns unleashed upon the game. It's impossible to know them all without like spamming her for hundreds of games. And then you're going to learn the patterns and kind of develop this preset knowledge on how to deal with each character. Here's a cheat code. Every time you load up in a game, you're in the champion select and loading. First thing you do is count all the abilities that you can reflect. Once you count them all up, you know what you can reflect. Order them by which one is more threatening than other. Now, this is going to have such great implications to your gameplay because you're going to develop these projections, these preset patterns of how you're going to deal with enemies before it even happens. You're going to get a lot of knowledge and insight, and it's going to allow you to use your W way better. It's incredible. So do this every time in the loading if you really want to be good at Mel, and you're going to be stomping everything. Okay, now here's the third part, which is executing. We got controlling, reflecting, and executing. Executing is how you get ahead and how you snowball. That will be the key in solo queue, how you can convert games into wins. Everything in the kit basically revolves around execution, whether it's minions, neutral monsters, or enemy champions. Everything has a threshold as soon as you hit it. So you need to master how to deal with all those 3. First is the minions. Minions will have a faint globe and they have any sort of stack, which is the passive, telling you that the passive is there, and you have a flat amount of damage. It's always flat plus the stacks. If you have above 0 stacks, which is 1 and any other number, they're gonna glow, which means that the passive is there, at least the flat amount. And flat amount, believe it or not, is pretty decent. Here's a tip and trick that I'm gonna show you later. It's impossible to miss casters under tower because your auto attack executes always. You'll will see that. It's so awesome. They're gonna be glowing, and then when they start glowing slightly more bright and the sigil of the Medarda family, like the cross, appears underneath them, they're ripe for execution. Any damage source is gonna tip them over the edge and they die. So you can trigger that with your Q, E, or auto attack. So that's gonna be very key in knowing how to execute minions. Here's the real mastery of the champion execution. All of it is gonna come down to whether you can execute the enemy or not. That's how you're gonna get pretty much all of your kills. Now the trick is how to execute enemy if they know that you can execute them. How does it happen? Every Mel player can execute the easy ones, but only the good ones are gonna be able to execute like the best players. You need to find a way how to trick the enemies, to outplay them, how to manipulate execution thresholds. First things first is you have to remember the sigil is gonna appear above the enemy head when you have enough damage to execute them. If you see that, you press ult, they die. Okay, fair enough. The more you play, the more you're gonna realize when you can do it. You will eventually develop a feeling that you will not need that to know when you can execute people. You're gonna have very, very good sense. And enemies are probably gonna be relying also on the execute threshold, which is why you shouldn't. Because a lot of the things can throw it off. The execute threshold does not calculate stuff like Comet Broken, stuff like Scorch Broken, stuff like Axiom Arcanus, stuff like Shadow Flame, stuff like Coup de Grace. You're getting it, right? If you have Axiom Arcanist alone and you have enemy on the threshold and then they regen above it, they have like Garen regeneration, so the sigil disappears, you have about 1 second to press the ult still, and you still get the execution because the Axiom Arcane is going to do that extra chunk of damage that he regenerated. You will need to know how to play around this. You will need to know how to manipulate the stacks. You're going to take sometimes bad trades just by auto attacks to extend the stackage until you get a second rotation of spells. Let's say you get a minor poke, enemy is like 20 stacks. You walk up and you auto attack him once or twice. They hit you with an ability or something. You lose the trade, but you buy time until the second set of rotation of your abilities. Then you do another combo and then you can get the execute. You can time when your Comet is up. You can time when your Scorch is up to trigger the ultimate at that very moment. There's a lot of these factors at play, and very often like a really good player will get to a point where they don't see the sigil ever. We're pressing ult, and this is what you need to do to excel and master the Mel. I will be learning alongside with you. I'm starting my Mel and rank to Challenger. By the time you're watching this video, it's already started. So I'll be there every single day on stream. If you want to ask me any more questions or have any build suggestions or something interesting, I'll show you the tips and tricks in game that you can do. And yeah, let's move. Hello everyone, and welcome to the tips and tricks portion of the video. Here I'm going to show you some very, very interesting key features with Mel. It's very important to know how her passive works. As soon as you attack something with either spell or auto attack, you're going to get at least the 57 damage of execution and then plus per stack. So as long as we have a non-zero amount of stacks, it's going to be very, very good for us because we will access the execute. And that can be super useful. When you auto attack minions, they're going to become blue. When they get low enough for the execution, they're going to get the sigil underneath them. Right? If you auto attack an enemy like this, it's going to apply it retroactively. Like you're going to instantly get the application of the stack. Right? So this is the faint blue and then the execution blue. This is incredible when you need to execute at enemies. And this is just the biggest bonus of this character is if you're under tower. So look at what happens when you auto attack a full HP caster on just the door ring. Instant execution. You're just instantly executing from full HP with just one item. And eventually you're gonna have more AP, obviously, and then you're just gonna be on the track with the game. You will always be executing casters throughout the game after just a single tower shot, making the farming so much easier because you don't need to do the setup. It's very, very noob friendly in that way that the passive farms basically for you. Okay, on to another thing. When we're dealing with enemy champions, the combo will be you're gonna be doing E auto, right? Okay, so we got like 25 stacks there. That's because I did E auto, Q auto. But if we do, let's say, EQ auto, we're gonna get significantly less because we're not accessing our passive. Let's say even if it hits like that, we got full on hit by E there. So that's why we got a bit more. So if you do the E auto attack into Q auto attack, even without the full E, we still get 27, even if he was not sitting in the E. That's the ult transformation. That means that we can execute him as long as we have ult. Okay, how ult works here. I picked Nasus on purpose so I can show you the HP region. Okay. We'll get him to the execute threshold when the sigil appears above his head. I'm just auto attacking so I get him there. Now he's there. He's gonna heal up and Gonna go down, and I still kill him. Even though the sigil disappeared, I still killed him because I have the bonus damage of Axiom Arcanus. The Axiom Arcanus bonus damage is not pre-calculated in the execute. And this is where really good Mel players are gonna come in, and they're gonna understand when you can execute even though you don't have the sigil, based on all these external factors. Now you can go absolutely nuts with this. You can wait for your Comet to be up. You can wait for your Scorch to be up. You can have Axiom Arcanus. You can have Coup de Grace. You can have Malignance. You can wait for your Ludens to be up. You can have Shadow Flame. All of these things are not going to be calculated in. So you're going to get to a threshold that's imaginary. You know it executes, the enemy does not. You go in and you kill them all the same. And they have no idea. Doing the jungle camps, it's just so easy to clear the camps because you're getting the thresholds. I mean, easy to steal them, not clear them. But basically what you're going to do is when they come low and then you feel like enemies are going to go for execution, you're going to place E on top of them. So you have a constant damage. You need like ticking damage. That's the proper way to actually steal it. As soon as something is going to go down, let's say Baron is 2k, you're going to put your E on top of the Baron. That's what you do. Here you can't because I'm the one being focused, so I can't really place my E directly on top of him. But generally at around this HP, you shoot the E and then push it over the edge with the Q. And that will not guarantee you get it, but if everyone else fails, like the bigger smites fail, you will be the one getting it. And now we have a lot of external factors. I have Ludens waiting and it's stacked. I have Malignance waiting and it's stacked. I have a Shadow Flame to execute. Get him to the execute threshold. I can execute him here, I'm pretty sure, and I don't even have the threshold. I'm pretty sure I can execute him at this point. Okay, he got the threshold, it disappeared, A while ago it disappeared. You can wait 3, 4, 5, even 6 seconds. You can wait the max duration of your ult because of all of these externalities, you're gonna get the execution, no matter what. Let's see. I think I'm like 1 or 2 more auto attacks. Let's try in one. Actually, one more because a region. Boom. Execute. Not even a sigil. Right, and this is the sense that you're gonna have to develop, like at which stage of the game you are, what level you are, what items you have, what items does enemy have. Like this knowledge is gonna come down after playing like hundreds of games. And when you can do this and just execute enemies without the tell, it's gonna be so incredible because you're gonna surprise them, and that's how you build up the advantage. Yeah, the farming, the blue, you can see the sigil when you can execute, but you can execute without the sigil if you know you can do it. These are the main tips and tricks. Here's a few other tips and tricks. When you start the game, you're gonna need level 7 to execute the backline with EQ. Okay, if you want to clear the backline, you need level 7 to clear these instantly. Okay, the casters. You can do it on level 5 if you recall and buy a blasting one, which you're going to be going for Malignance anyway. So if you do get a blasting one, it pushes you over the threshold to actually instantly execute it. But yeah, if you don't have it, and if you're going like Dark Seal and Amp Tome or Amp Tome and Mana, you can still execute on level 7. So those are kind of the thresholds that make your life a lot easier. You can decide not to go attack speed in the runes to get extra AP, so you can have that threshold a bit easier. But yeah, that's on you if you really want to experiment with that. A couple of more tips in how to play Mel. You can use your ultimate ability to not execute always. You can use it to preserve the stacks longer if you're looking to extend the fight or deny enemies any ground and getting them poked out. You can also tag multiple enemies right before pressing ult, so you don't need to necessarily wait for one target to be super low to be executed. If you have stacks on 3-4 different targets during a team fight, it's perfectly viable to get a mega AoE ult that's just going to win you so much tempo on the map that you have absolute control. Your E is a magnificent ability, but it also has a fixed distance. You cannot recast it, cannot make it stop in the air, so it's always going the same distance, which means it's a better follow-up tool than an initiation tool because it rewards landing max range. So make sure you use this very correctly and try to either get it on good phase checks or follow up as a chain CC. The one good way to pretty much guarantee land it is the input buffer E flash, which is just incredible. If you do E flash and versus a flashless enemy, it's just a guaranteed death essentially, as long as you have lethal. Your W also works on your teammates to an extent, which means you can stand in front of them or right next to them to actually block the damage. So you can save your teammates or bait enemies around it. I imagine we're gonna get some highlights flashing onto your own teammate to get the reflect working. So that's very important to remember. There's also characters where that actually makes so much sense. For example, characters like Katarina, characters like Samira. You're returning their daggers back at them, stacking your own passive, doing absurd amounts of damage. And if you're blocking for multiple teammates, like yourself and multiple teammates, your damage scales. That also works obviously with somebody like Misfortune. That is another tip. And yeah, that's kind of all the things that I talked about put into context. So yeah, thank you for watching. See you on the next video in the stream. Bye bye everyone.